will not only help you, but many others in your community. I met Miss Flowers, gosh, Angela, was it only a year ago? It feels like it's been longer, but you never know where you're going to meet people who are going to end up being very, very important friendships, relationships, and mentors for you, support to you, and you to them and to others. I met her at the beauty shop. So we met through our hairstylist, and I'm so honored for her experience and her knowledge, in that she not only shows up in amazing ways for people here throughout Cleveland and Cuyahoga County and beyond, but now she's here showing up for you in Pakistan because she believes in what you're capable of doing and what the team of Girls Fly is doing there. I want to thank Imrana, Barak, and Sabat for coordinating this session, hosting this session, and for upcoming sessions. So have a good meeting, and thank you again, Ms. Flowers, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Gail. This is so kind of you that you took time to join us. We're happy to announce that for this project, we're partnering with the Pakistan Health Parliament, the Canadian chapter, who are partnering us for in this project. A little bit about the K chapter is that the Pakistan Health Parliament has long been a space for students to engage with critical issues and contribute to meaningful advocacy. As a part of this initiative, their chapter continues to expand its impact through specialized committees, and we're really happy that one of their representatives, Ms. Irfa, and her team is here. I'm just going to give a minute to Ms. Irfa to introduce herself and the K chapter as well. Ms. Irfa, you have the floor.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Arfa Hassan, and I'm the Chief Secretary of Mental Health Committee at Pakistan Health Parliament Canadian chapter. I am really happy and delighted to partner up with Girls Fly Pakistan. So let me give you a little bit of background about the Pakistan Health Parliament. So it's a platform that allows students to engage with critical health issues and be a part of a meaningful advocacy. Our chapter here at Canadian is led by Ms. Angshi Khan, whose leadership drives the vision and direction of all that we do. Within PHP, one of the most active and essential committee is the Mental Health Committee, which I am honored to lead. And our main focus is raising awareness, breaking stigma, and promoting student well-being. We try to create safe spaces where students can have open conversations about mental health and, of course, feel supported. So, yeah, that's that. Over to you, Barak.
Thank you so much, Irfan. Thank you so much for showing up as well. We're going to move directly to the session, and I'm going to introduce a very incredible speaker. She's a powerhouse herself. We're really delighted that Miss Angela Flowers is here with us. Miss Angela is a nationally acclaimed business strategist, trainer, and a licensed independent social worker in Ohio who has over 20 years of experience in education and the nonprofit sector. As the owner of Making a Difference Consulting, she has secured more than 12.5 million in grants and has created transformative youth programs like the IVAS and Voice to Men, empowering youth through trauma-informed practices and social emotional learning. A renowned speaker and an author of Footprints in the Sky, Show Me the Money, and Youth Bliss Academy, Miss Angela has trained over 21,000 professionals nationwide on mental health, stress, and burnout. Thank you so much, Miss Angela, for joining in. We are so happy and grateful that you're here. The floor is yours. We can begin to have this session with you.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to first start off by saying thank you all for joining me this evening, just to talk a little bit about mental health and trauma-informed practices as well as coping skills. And so I'm honored to be here, blessed to be here. And the first thing that I wanted to start with is just looking at and grounding ourselves to kind of discuss how we are showing up in this moment. And so inside of the chat box, if you can drop a word or an emoji to just kind of express how you are showing up in this current moment, that will give me a little bit of guidance, because it's important to just look at being mindful in the moment and where we are physically and emotionally. And so go ahead and feel free to drop that inside of the chat. I am showing up. I feel refreshed. I feel amazing to be here. And so my feelings are, I just feel happy today. So if you can, please drop that inside of the chat box. And then also too, is there a way to share the slide deck that was prepared for today?
Yes, Miss Anza, you can share your screen, or if you want, I can do that and help you with it.
Okay. Yes, if you please can share it for me, because then I can see the screen. I think if I share it, I won't be able to see anything.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Thank you for those of you that are joining inside of the chat box and letting me know how you are showing up today. I see a happy face emoji, so thank you for that. I also see a comment about feeling exhausted. And when we think about mental health and we think about just all of the things that show up with mental health, oftentimes it's looking at what our stressors are. So those things that are stressing us like in the moment. And a lot of times I always tell people that mental health is just as important as our physical health. So just like we would go to the doctor if we are having physical symptoms where our body is hurting, it's the same thing with our mental health. We should be doing wellness checks just in general, because everyone at some point is going to experience some level of stress that overwhelms the body. And when we think of mental health symptoms that show up in our body, it may look like a headache, or it may look like some stomach problems, or it may look like racing thoughts of the mind. And those are going to be the physical symptoms that our body lets us know that we have something going on where the body feels too overwhelmed. And so when we think of different stressors and things like that, if you are experiencing any of those physical symptoms, that's your body's indicator to let you know, hey, you have a lot going on. There's something going on with the body. And so I always like to start off with a grounding exercise just to check in to see where everyone is before we start something. So thank you all for dropping those things inside of the chat box. So today we're going to be talking about building resiliency skills and trauma-informed approaches to coping strategies for youth and communities. And so what that means is we're going to take a deep dive into what trauma-informed care practices are, but then also looking at what some of the positive coping strategies are that you can utilize. And then also looking at what are some of the stressors and the barriers that prevent people from seeking out mental health strategies and support. So we will look at what those things look like. We can go to the next slide. And so we already did this where you got to choose how you were showing up and what you felt like when you came to this particular session today. So again, I appreciate those that were able to drop those inside of the chat box, because how we're showing up and what we're able to receive is going to be important. We're going to go to the next slide. So when we think about mental health, this is something that is normal. It's a part of every human. Each person has physical symptoms, but they also have a mind, and they also have experiences and challenges that may create stress or difficult times for you. So when we think of how we feel, we want to be mindful that our feelings are valid, and that even if someone else doesn't understand what we're trying to express or what feelings we currently have, it doesn't make them less important because they don't understand. And so it's so important that we focus on being able to identify how we feel, be able to express ourselves, but then also to connecting with family, with community, and what resources, so that we are able to heal through things that are creating or causing us pain. And so oftentimes, even here in the States, people look at mental health as something that may be considered a weakness, and it's not. It is definitely not a weakness to seek support or to express how you're feeling, because we need to understand that not all times are going to be good times and great times, that there are some times where we struggle with our mind, where it can create sadness within us or depression, or we can be so anxious and worrying about the future, or worrying about our family, worrying about finances, that those things can create anxiety within us. And so it is definitely not a weakness to be able to seek support. And support looks different to different people. So what I would like you to do inside of the chat box is to drop who is a part of your support system. So when you have challenges that are occurring, who supports you and how might they show up, right? So whenever I'm doing presentations, I like it to be interactive. And so I definitely appreciate if you are able to drop those in the chat box. My number one support, I always pray and go to God first. And that is something that I learned just growing up, that I'm going to seek answers and support from God first. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to either go to my mother or close family members that I trust with my feelings and emotions. And so I see inside of the chat box, we have people that are saying they go to their mother or they go to God and close friends. Prayer is important as well. And so being able to have someone and have something to support you is definitely the number one coping strategy when you are in a place where you feel overwhelmed or you're not feeling like your normal self. And so it definitely is important that you at least have 1 to 2 support strategies or support people that can help you through difficult times. And so I think that being able to identify is important. And sometimes when we are in the thick of what's happening to us and we're feeling overwhelmed, sometimes we may feel alone, and you may feel as if you don't have someone that you can go to. And that's why I always say, pray, go to God first. Journaling also is a amazing coping strategy if you feel like you don't have someone that you can physically talk to in the moment, but that is definitely something that is important. And so just recognizing that whatever challenges you may have that you're going through, you're not alone. So sometimes we don't speak about it because there may be other feelings and emotions attached to whatever it is that we're going through. And it could be feelings of shame or not feeling understood. And so when you are able to express what you have going on, what it does is it opens the opportunity for someone else that you may be talking to even say, I feel the same way, and that you aren't alone. And so that's why it's so important to just kind of seek out our support system, but then also letting our support system know that, hey, I look to you as a support system too, because sometimes they may not know that they are a part of your circle in your support system. So allowing them to just know that, hey, sometimes I may call on you because I may need you and you're a part of my support team. So that's going to be important. We can go to the next slide. So today what we're gonna cover is just understanding mental health in general and what mental health is, looking at like what some of the myths are, and just recognizing that mental health is a part of our overall well-being. But then we will look at too trauma and what things are considered traumatic and its effects, how we can build resiliency tools and then we're going to actually look at some practical coping skills that we can use, just like some of the ones that we just put inside of the chat box. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So when we are looking at mental health is not just about a feeling, right? So a lot of times when people think about mental health, they think that there is something wrong with the person if they are struggling. And so that's just not the case. Mental health is more so how our mind is operating on a day-to-day basis. And so sometimes when we think about mental health, it's more so the psychological part, but it's how our well-being and how we may show up when we're under stress and duress. And so what it does is when we are struggling, it can affect our relationships with our family members. It can affect how we show up to the workplace, how we show up in school. And so oftentimes there are signs that someone is struggling with their mental health. And so some of those signs may show up and may look like if my grades decline. So if I have any young people on the call today that are scholars in school, sometimes when you're struggling with other situations, life situations, you may not be able to concentrate or focus. So the attention span may decrease to a short attention span. So that's an indicator that there's some things that are going on. Other ways that mental health may show up in our lives could be, I am starting to become more irritable, and it's showing up with how I interact with people that are around me each day. So maybe I'm becoming more snappy or argumentative, or the little things that normally don't affect me or bother me are making me more sensitive. So now my feelings and emotions are more heightened. I am just more jumpy and agitated a little bit, but then it also can show up as a lack of productivity in the workplace. So normally if I'm a high performer and I'm used to getting things done, and now I'm starting to slack in the workplace, it can show up that way as well. And so it's more than just something is going on with my mind, because it definitely affects the mind, but it also affects just how we show up for ourselves too. So if you're noticing that maybe if you're unable to get things accomplished, and now your self-talk, what you are saying or thinking to yourself, starts to become negative, that's an indicator that you have something else going on. Because those negative remarks or saying I'm not good enough or things like that, that's when the mind starts to show up in a different way for us. And so when we think about good mental health, that's more so being grateful and thankful for what we have, being able to be present in the moment, and then also too, just being able to show up as our best authentic self. And so some of the things that occur when we're dealing with some challenging situations, some of the things that we can do to kind of manage our stress, it could be that, again, we said prayer. It could be meditation. It could be that we are moving our body so that we can release those endorphins and those chemicals in the body, so that it can just help us clear our minds sometimes as well. But time management skills too. So these are going to be some of the things that you can do in the event that you're starting to feel overwhelmed. And so we will go to the next slide and just kind of discuss like what some of the common myths are of mental health. And so the number one myth is that mental health problems are rare. And so that's a myth, because when we think about mental health globally, at some point, 1 in every 7 to 8 people will experience a mental health challenge. And so that means that it doesn't matter like what time period in the life you experience it over the lifespan. It could be as a young person, you're experiencing a challenge. And a mental health challenge doesn't have to be something that's long-term, and it doesn't have to be something that is diagnosed. It could be just simply I can notice that I am feeling a certain type of way and it's affecting me. It's affecting my mood. It's affecting my behavior and it's affecting my interactions. And that's why for me, when I talk about mental health and I talk about challenges, it becomes something that is normalized because everyone is going to interact with other people, but there's always going to be something that can create stressors with you. Now, when it becomes something where the coping strategies or the things that you are trying to do to work through whatever the issues are starts to not work, and it starts to create a lot of feelings that are uncomfortable that are longer term, and these are not short-term things, that's where, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, that's where seeking out additional support outside of your close net of resources that we already discussed is going to be important. So the number one myth was mental health problems are rare, and we know that that is not the case. Another myth is that talking about mental health makes it worse. And so oftentimes people think that when you talk about struggling with depression, or you talk about having anxiety or having thoughts or feelings that may not be considered normal, they think that the more that you talk about it, it's going to make that person feel worse. And that is a myth. It's a myth because when a person is experiencing different challenges and they are able to talk about it and open up, that means that they're no longer sheltering those feelings. They're no longer stuffing the feelings and emotions that they have, and they are able to release some of that energy, and they're able to just release how they're feeling. So now they feel seen. If we are hiding how we feel, and we are hiding when we feel depressed or we feel sad, or we have these worrying thoughts, if you're constantly hiding it, you actually are hiding a piece of yourself and may feel as if people aren't connecting with you and that you are not being seen. But when you are able to express that, especially to people that you feel comfortable with, then it allows you then to know that you are not by yourself and you're not alone, but that you can then get the support that you may need. Another myth is faith and prayer are enough. And so faith and prayer, again, like I said, is my number one go-to. Whenever I'm experiencing any type of challenge, I'm definitely praying about it, and I'm talking to God and I'm asking for direction. But then also too, if it gets to a point where you feel as if you are a danger to yourself or that you may be harmful to other people, then that's where you seek out additional support too. And so prayer, depending on your religious beliefs, is there to support and guide you and to strengthen you. But then also too, sometimes we have to seek additional support in order to work through the challenges that we may be going through. And so definitely faith is so important, especially with our mental health, because it gives us the balance and it gives us a grounding tool that we can go to first. And then it may be that I may need to seek support from someone else as well. And then the last myth with mental health is that only weak people need help. And that's not the truth. Being able to ask for support and to ask for help, that's strength in itself. It shows that you are being brave. It shows that you have courage and that you know when something may not feel right, and that maybe you don't have the tools that you need in order to work through whatever the problems or the issues are. We can go to the next slide. And so when we think about mental health, oftentimes the challenges that we experience, they are often associated with just stressors that we experience in life. So those life stressors, but then also too, it could be that something traumatic has happened to us. And oftentimes trauma changes the brain chemistry and it lives in our DNA. So sometimes we may have feelings and emotions in our body and not know where they come from, not realizing that the generational trauma from our grandparents or our great grandparents or those in our family has been passed down to us. And so because Trauma can live in the body and in the DNA for 4 generations. Sometimes we experience depression, or we experience these feelings and we don't know where it came from, not realizing that maybe I didn't directly experience something, but maybe someone else in my family lineage has experienced something that has been passed down to me, and it makes me more susceptible to having some of these feelings. And so trauma definitely is something that we experience, and we may experience it differently. So just because something is traumatic to one person doesn't mean it's going to be traumatic to the next person. And so when we think about trauma, it affects us differently. And there are things that may be considered traumatic and may affect our mental health that may not affect the next person. And so when I think about trauma and just explaining what that might look like, it could be a bad car accident. And now you're nervous about getting behind the wheel. Or it could be a fire in the home that creates trauma, and now you're experiencing some type of anxiety. So whatever the traumatic experiences may be, that experience can affect your mental health. Inside of the chat box, please drop something that might be considered traumatic, or something that someone else may experience that may affect their mental health outside of the 3 that I just named. Because oftentimes people may not even realize that some of the simple things that may affect another person, it may not affect you the same way. And so I know here in the States, there are a lot of things that may occur in certain communities or neighborhoods, whether it's neighborhood violence, that is traumatic to some people and it affects their mental health. Other things could be like natural disasters or some types of crisis, or it could just simply be something that's happening in the family unit, whether the mom and the dad might be arguing, and there is some domestic violence that could show up and affect someone's mental health. Disrespectful behavior, I see in the chat box, definitely that can be something that affects mental health as well. And then comparing children definitely are things that can affect mental health. I see family problems inside of the chat as well. Sometimes too, even the stress and the pressure of success is something, or perfectionism too, that can affect mental health. And so oftentimes we don't realize, if you're a parent or an adult, sometimes you don't realize that your expectations for young people is something that could affect their mental health too, because now they are trying to rise to your standards, and they're trying to fit into whatever it is that you have planned out for them. And it's creating some of that stress, and it's creating some of those barriers too to mental health. Not having a voice, because oftentimes too, depending on how you are raised, you may not be able to question or to bring up certain things. And because you may feel as if your voice is silenced, that can create different feelings of worry, anxiety, as well. And I see that in the chat box too. Wrongdoings of elders, that's something too that can create trauma. And then also definitely marital issues and financial struggles. And so when we think about all of these things that are listed in the chat box, those things can create different forms of stress, feeling overwhelmed, anxiety, feeling stuck, or feeling like you're not supported. And that then will affect our mental health. And so it's very, very important to actually have different outlets and coping skills and strategies to kind of combat and deal with some of those things. It may look different for children though, because when we think of a young person, that may look different because they may not have the language to ask for support or help, or it may be something that is not encouraged as well. And so then if you are a young person that has experienced these types of trauma, and now you grow up into a young adult, now you are working through childhood trauma, and you're working through things that have occurred in your childhood so that you can heal and be a healthy adult so that you're not repeating the same patterns too. We can go to the next slide. So the way that trauma shows up and the way that it affects our body, we talked a little bit about being more irritable, but it may show up as mood swings or anger, or sadness, or just feeling numb completely. But it also could show up with trouble sleeping. So having difficulty sleeping, or you could oversleep. So that's a red flag as well, that you have some mental health things going on. If you're oversleeping or you are overeating, those are going to be coping strategies. It may make you feel better in the moment, but those are negative coping strategies. So sleep is always an indicator to me that if a person is sleeping too much, or they're not getting enough rest, that's a red flag indicator that something else is going on. But then also too, low energy, feeling fatigued a lot. That's something that is an indicator that your mind and body is affected. If you also notice that you are starting to withdraw from everyday everyday things that usually make you feel good, or you're not showing up, or you're not talking to friends or family, and you're starting to isolate yourself, that's going to be a red flag too, that something else is going on. And then just relationships in general, starting to have difficulty concentrating, or some of those intrusive thoughts, depending on what the traumatic situation was, may start to replay in the mind, and it may show up as flashbacks, or it may start to make you have negative thoughts. These are all red flags and indicators that something is going on within me. Next slide. So when we have all of these things going on, we definitely want to work through what that looks like. And one of the terms that people use is resiliency. So being resilient. And so oftentimes resiliency is looking like being strong, or it's looking like showing up a certain type of way. And so I want to caution us from feeling as if we have to be strong all the time, because what happens when we feel as if we have to be strong, sometimes we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to ask for help, or to seek out someone that can support us when we are struggling, whether it's with finances or marital problems, or it's with employment, or it could be abuse that we are struggling with. And so resiliency is a term that people often use, especially in the mental health world, when you see people still are able to function through some of the trauma or some of the mental health issues that they've had. But I just want to caution that you don't have to be strong, right? So what resiliency is, it just means that I'm trying to show up and face whatever the challenges are the best way I know how, in the best way that I'm able to. So it could just look like I woke up today and I was able to get dressed. So if I'm depressed, it could be a challenge just getting out of bed for the day. So being resilient could look like today I was able to try to make it to work today, or today was the first day that I didn't cry for a certain amount of time. And so sometimes we have to meet ourselves where we're at in the moment, identify how we feel, but then also to look at different ways that we're able to cope and go through whatever we're going through for the day. And so sometimes it could look like just a moment of gratitude that I was able to wake up today. Or it could look like just reaching out to someone and they picked up the phone, or they were able to support you. So that could be what it looks like. But when we think about resiliency, it's being able to be flexible in the moment and allowing yourself to feel the feels and to feel how you feel. And so whenever challenges are going on with my clinical clients, when I'm doing therapy, I tell them it's okay to feel those feelings in the moment, because sometimes we may shut ourselves down We may have control over if we're going to cry. We might make ourselves stop crying. But what that does is it suppresses and it pushes down those feelings, and they're going to come out later in some kind of way. So if you experience any of the feelings in the moment and you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling depressed, or you're feeling like you're on the edge, feel the feelings in the moment so that your body can be aware and can feel it, but not allowing yourself to feel it too long. And when I say too long, just for me, I give myself a 3-day max. 72 hours. If I'm feeling a certain type of way, I'm going to give myself time to experience and feel the feelings and emotions. I'm going to journal about it. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to think about what I'm feeling. But then I have to say, okay, let me then begin to work through whatever is going on. And what that allows you to do is it allows the body to feel and experience, to acknowledge how you feel. But then now it's more of like, okay, what's the game plan? What am I going to do to get out of whatever is occurring? Because once you sit in it too long, then it starts to feel normal to your body to not get up for the day, to sleep all day. And that's where people start to develop the longer term things that turn into mental health issues, like a clinical depression. And clinical depression is if you've been experiencing a sadness or withdrawal or those type of things for 2 years or more, almost every day. And so when it gets to that point, that's where additional support and resources are needed. And so oftentimes about 60% of mental health conditions were preventable, and they are treatable when you first experience them. As time goes past and you're not addressing what the root cause is, that's where it turns into something that is more clinical, and becomes the actual mental health issue. So again, you definitely want to address when things come up instead of suppressing it. We can go to the next one. And so ways that you can build the resiliency tools and the skills are having those supportive relationships. We talked a little bit about that. Practicing self-care. So that's something that you can practice daily. And self-care, it doesn't have to be something elaborate. It doesn't have to be things that cost money. It could be, I'm practicing prayer. I'm practicing some mindfulness tools. I'm stretching. I'm making sure that my body is staying hydrated. I'm creating or listening to music. I'm journaling how I feel, because then I'm able to go back through and look at some of the challenges that I've overcome and things that I did to overcome them, but then how far I'm able to come. So journaling definitely is a great self-care practice, but then also too, looking at and identifying healthy ways to deal with these big feelings and these big emotions that may come up when I'm stressed and overwhelmed. Other things that can be done is just kind of looking at what my sense of purpose is and creating some goals for myself to say, okay, where do I want to go and how can I get there? Those are going to help you with resiliency tools, because then it's like, okay, I have goals that are set for me and I need to get there. What can I do to make me feel a little bit better so I'm able to operate and get there? So what are some of the ways that I can get through some of these stressors? And so not allowing experiences to define you, because it doesn't define you, but knowing that if I am struggling, I'm getting the support and I'm getting the healing that I need in order to feel safe and in order to move forward. We can go to the next one. And so again, some of those coping strategies might be taking a deep breath. So if I don't have a stress ball, or I don't have something on hand to kind of help me, if I'm having a panic attack, it's just reminding my brain and reminding myself to just breathe. And that is simple. Just breathe. And if you're able to take the correct deep breaths, what that might look like is breathing in and holding it for about 3 seconds. And then you're going to blow out through your mouth. Or you can do what's called a 5-finger breathing technique, where you take your hand and you trace the fingers where you breathe in, hold it, and then you breathe out. And if you can do that 5 times, what it does is it allows your body to calm down. It allows the heart rate to slow. It allows the brain to catch up because of the oxygen that you are putting inside of your brain and your body. But it allows you in the moment to be able to ground yourself, to then make an informed decision to where you're not panicking or you're not overreacting in the moment if something is occurring. Other things that you can do, again, the journaling, physical movement, self-expression, but even just talking to somebody that you trust, having that social connection, if you feel comfortable. Inside of the chat box, I would like you to drop what are some of the tools or the skills that you use when you may be experiencing some type of stressor. What are some of the things that you may do? And as those are being dropped in the chat box, we're going to move to the next slide. Other things that you can do, especially if you are experiencing a mental health challenge, could be establishing some routines for yourself. So the to-do list, not having too many things on your list to do, because that can become overwhelming, but also just establishing some type of routine. So if I'm having difficulty sleeping, now I'm going to establish a sleep routine. It could be I'm reading before I go to sleep, or journaling, or even just I'm unplugging from social media and from technology, because that can be a lot sometimes too, because all of the messages that are coming in and just the news media and just some of those things may keep the brain wired up. So sometimes fasting and just disconnecting from social outlets is important and good as well. Practicing no. So being able to have some of those boundaries and saying no without explaining why. And that can sometimes be hard if you are a person that is a people pleaser and you want to give and want to do all the time, but recognizing if you're unable to in the moment. So if your body is telling you that you don't have the capacity to be able to do certain things that people are asking of you, being able to set the boundary to say, not right now, or just no in general, is going to be so key. And I know sometimes we can't say no to our family because they may rely on us, right? But maybe being able to have the conversation to say, I'm overwhelmed right now. This is all I'm capable of doing, and seeing if someone else can pick up in other areas. So that may be important too, just being able to set some boundaries. But then also too, great coping strategies is gratitude, practicing gratitude. So things that we are grateful for. One of the things that I have my clients do is each morning, when they are doing their morning routine, they are looking at themselves inside of the mirror, and they are actually practicing gratitude. So it's saying things that they are thankful for and they are grateful for. And so, yes, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a clinical social worker. So this is my 23rd year as a mental health therapist. I own a mental health counseling agency here in the United States. And so as a clinician, we see clients that are children all the way up through senior citizens. We see them in the private practice office, but we also may do home visits and see them in the home. But a lot of my clinicians are in the schools with our young people. So here in the States, over the last 7 to 10 years, young people have been more open to talk about mental health. So we have seen an influx of adolescents, teenagers, and young adults that are seeking mental health services because they don't see a stigma or a shame that's attached to it. And so they will come and say, hey, I'm having problems with controlling my anger. Can I see someone? So as young as 5 years old, we have clinicians that are seeing young people in schools because they may be experiencing some type of trauma, or they may be acting out, or they may just have just things that are happening with them, or that they have witnessed that affects them, and they're asking for support groups, and they are asking for individual services too. And we are seeing more and more older family members too that are asking for support too. And so even with my family, my mother is 70, and in her day and time, you didn't talk about what happened in the home. You didn't talk about any type of abuse, or you didn't talk about family issues outside of the home. It was things that just wasn't spoke about. So in my family, with my upbringing, we didn't talk a lot about feelings and emotions, and we didn't talk about just our mental health in general, because it just wasn't something that was shared. And what I'm seeing now, with me being in the field for so long, more and more young people are more open to saying, hey, we don't want to look at how you grew up, or how it was as tradition, because that has been a tradition in the States too, that you just don't talk about it. But now more and more young people are saying, hey, this is affecting me. This is stopping me from progressing, or this is not okay. And so that's why now there has been more and more clinicians that are now embedded in schools, and more and more young people are seeking counseling, therapy, but not just because something is happening that's wrong. It could be I'm seeking it because something great is happening as well. So you don't have to always seek support when there's something bad going on either. And that's something that as a clinician, I speak a lot in different states, and I speak a lot to say mental health should be normalized just like physical health. So it doesn't have to be something that's wrong that's happening. Some people come to us just because it could be, hey, I'm stuck right now. I don't know what I want for my future. Can you help me? So it doesn't have to be that it's always some type of trauma or something that is a reason why people are seeking support. And so I see in the chat box, what's the worst case you've experienced? Child abuse has been one of the worst experiences, one of the cases that I've experienced over time with girls. So because I worked a lot with teen girls, when they would come for therapy or counseling to find out that they had been sexually assaulted or abused, but it happened when they were young, not as teens, but it happened when they were younger. Those type of cases are typically the worst cases, because violence against children is definitely something that shouldn't occur, because oftentimes they don't have a voice. They are helpless. And what I'm finding, especially in the States, when we're working with teen girls, about one in every three, or about one in every three has experienced some form of assault. And it affects them. It affects their relationships. It affects their self-esteem and confidence. It affects how they may show up as mothers, as wives. And so that child abuse, definitely, out of all of the years of working in mental health, those are usually the cases that stick with me the most, because of some of the things that have occurred in these children's lives. We can go to the next slide. Other things that you can do, so other types of self-care. So when some of these things are occurring, things that you can do, it might just be, we talked a little bit about having a routine for your own self-care, being out in nature. Sometimes people, they do like horseback ride, or they walk, or they do some type of sport. Being able to create affirmations for yourself, but then also to being able to just manage your time, and having hobbies or self-identity, or being able to organize things are going to be ways that you can take care of self-care. I have a comment in the chat. The comment in the chat says that sometimes when you go to the person to talk about the issues, the traumas you share, your emotions and feelings, the other significant person doesn't know how to interact. Definitely. Sometimes when you're sharing, especially with people that are close to you and they may not have experienced it, they don't know what to say. So sometimes it could be they're processing what you just shared. And we don't all process at the same speed or rate. And it could be that it's making them look at you not as judgment, but more so, I don't know how I can help you. And if that's the case, and that occurs when you're trying to share, just being able to share, it's a release for you, but you may not get what you need, right? So if that person that you feel comfortable sharing with is unable to assist you or help you, that's where outside support is going to be key. Because sometimes there is a thing called transference. So if you share something and now it's affecting me, that energy or whatever it is that you just shared, it may be creating a secondary trauma in me. I didn't directly experience it. You did, but now it's affecting me and my body. And that can happen too. So sometimes we connect with others' experiences and it does personally affect us. But if that is something that's happening where you're sharing the issues and you're talking about it, but you don't feel like anything has been resolved, that's where it could be, maybe I want to go to a support group where someone else has experienced something similar to me, that then they can connect and relate. But now we have a clinician or someone that's able to help us work through. Groups don't work for everyone. That's why some people do group and some people may do individual counseling or individual therapy, right? Because sometimes a group setting may not be personalized enough, or you may not feel connected or safe enough to share what you may really need to share. And that's why having an individual person that's dedicated to you, that's not biased at all, because they have no connection to the family, they have no connection to you in general, besides now you are coming to see them, they can then give support where it's not attached to any kind of emotional things either. Because think about it, when we share something personal with our family, they want to protect us. They want to take care of us. They want to take the pain away. They want to hug and support us. And so, because they're that invested in how we feel, sometimes they may not give us the best support or advice. It could be tainted a little bit. It could be biased a little bit because they want us to feel better. So sometimes too, it could be I'm overreacting, or I am maybe I'm sensitive to a topic or something else, and my family is supporting me because they want to support me. But maybe I need someone to say, okay, let's look at this. Is this the reality of what happened? Let's look at the facts versus the feelings. So being able to have that individual person to kind of support and help you navigate is going to be key. Question inside of the chat: are there female married girls approaching you for the struggles in their marriages? Yes. Um, we have, I personally have clients that are married, and they will come and maybe they feel as if their voice is not being heard because they are the female in the relationship. And so navigating just ways that their voice can show up is something that we work through, so that they are not offending their husband, right? So we want to make sure that the respect is given because he is the husband and the head of the marriage and the household. But then also too, the young girls, the young ladies that are coming, they want to make sure too that their needs are being met as well. So finding what that balance might look like, or that compromise, is going to be something that is key. And so there are ways that you are able to get your needs voiced. that maybe it may not look like you're challenging whatever the husband is saying, but you're looking at it to say, let's look at it together so we can see how this can best support our family. And so sometimes it could just be we are going over healthier communication strategies. But then also, too, sometimes it's the wife having the husband come in, because sometimes it could be that she's not understanding where he's coming from because he's not communicating. This is why the decisions are being made. So that could be something, too, that that we discuss in the session, right? And so ways that you can build skills outside of just being a good listener, it could be asking that person too, how do you need me to show up to support you? Because sometimes support doesn't just look like you're listening. It could be helping them create an action plan. It could be maybe inviting them to some things that you're doing that you enjoy doing. So oftentimes, when it's something like depression, those are going to be times where getting them out of the house and getting them active is going to be key. But if it's depression to where it's a biological depression, that means that maybe it's in the family lineage. Sometimes some people take medication because there's a chemical imbalance. And so sometimes that's where seeing a psychiatrist, in addition to actual counseling and therapy, is something that offsets and that works as well. So once you've exhausted all of the other coping skills, you've used prayer, you have talked to family members, now you've gotten a therapist, if they are one that is able to prescribe medication, because sometimes our bodies don't have all of the tools that we need. It may not be that we don't have like all of the chemicals in our body. It may be low. So maybe we don't know that we need magnesium or we need vitamin D because we're not getting the nutrients that we need through our food. That can affect our mood as well. And so sometimes showing up could be, maybe I am going with you to the appointment, and that's a way that I'm able to support you. Maybe I'm sharing some resources and I'm giving you just connections and phone numbers and tools and support because I helped you research it. Maybe you don't have the energy to actually look for the help for yourself, but if I confided in you, now I'm looking for those types of things to help you. We can go to the next slide. So when should you consider the professional help? And we just kind of talked a little bit about that. When the strategies are not working, and when you feel like nothing that you're doing is helping, you've tried to be positive, you've tried the affirmations, you've gone outside, you've taken deep breaths, you have tried to connect with family members. If you feel like nothing is working and now you are starting to have thoughts of harming yourself, or you are hiding some of the things that you're doing that are unhealthy. So sometimes in the States, what we see is people that are struggling with mental health, they may turn to drugs or alcohol, or they may turn to unhealthy behaviors where they are using their body in an inappropriate way, or they start to self-harm or cut. Those are going to be negative coping strategies because they're trying to deal with what's going on in the mind and the pain that they're feeling. That's when you need to seek help. And so when those thoughts start to creep in, you have to say, you know what, this is not a normal thought. I may need additional support. And so feeling helpless and hopeless, or feeling like you don't want to be here anymore, those are red flags. Those are thoughts that, okay, somebody that's not trained in this area is not going to be able to help me with this. I need to then seek support from someone that this is what they do. They are in this particular field to help me manage what I'm feeling and what I have going on. And so when it starts to interrupt your day-to-day life, you're not productive, and you start to see a decline in your mental health, a decline in your productivity, you start to feel like nothing's going to help you, that's when you should seek out mental health support if you're experiencing that. Now, On the flip side, because for me, mental health is just as important as physical health, and I'm going to say that again, we don't wait. And I teach my clients, don't wait for something bad to happen or for you to feel like you're at a place where you're so overwhelmed that nothing's going to happen and you're sinking. No. If you are continuously doing things to support your mental health constantly, then you'll already have the support in place that when a challenge does happen, you already have your support system and you already have your clinician to help you work through the things that are good and the things that are challenging for you. And so here in the States, mental health, people are able to pay for their mental health services through their health insurance. And so having the health insurance makes it to where it's not a big barrier so that you are able to constantly get support and you don't have to wait till something happens to then get support. But if a person does not have the health insurance, there are nonprofit organizations that offer the resources for free. So there are some agencies that will offer group therapy for free or the individual counseling and therapy for free if a person is uninsured or underinsured and they are not able to seek a clinician to actually help them. There is also another option for teletherapy. So telehealth, where now clinicians are able to be anywhere and they can log on and have virtual sessions with their clients. Now, is it 100% the same as an in-person session? It's not, because sometimes the energy and being able to connect with your client that way in person is always better. But if there is a transportation barrier or there is a barrier as far as like how far away someone is to be able to connect to services, teletherapy is about 85% the same as regular therapy. You have your trusted person, you have that clinician that can connect with you, can help guide you. They will give you homework to do. Therapy works when people work the therapy plan. So just coming and talking is not enough. The strategies that your therapist or your clinician is going to give you are going to be things that is going to require that you do things too. So they're going to give you, and these are all based on evidence-based models. These are things that have been proven to work for certain conditions, whether it's bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety. These are things that are proven. And so clinicians go to school typically for about 6 years before, and then they also have to do 2 years of internship before they can practice. And so with that, they have the experience and they have the tools and the skills to be able to work with a person through whatever the barriers are that they're struggling with, but they're then going to pair that with clinical interventions and give you homework assignments and things to do so that you're able to work through childhood trauma, you're able to work through communication barriers, you're able to kind of work through if there's marital issues and ways maybe you don't feel comfortable with bringing certain things up. You're going to do certain things in the session to help prepare you to then do those assignments. And that's how treatment works. You're able to then work on and deal with whatever the issues are so that you're able to heal through and start to become the best version of yourself again. And so that's kind of like the purpose of what therapy does when you're able to seek the professional help. And yes, I can put something together in terms of some resources and just some action plan steps in general for certain conditions. If there are certain things that you yourself or a family member may be struggling with, and if you drop it in the chat just in general, it could just say depression, or it could say anxious about future. If you drop those specific things inside of the chat, or it's a direct message, then I can prepare some of those tools and those resources to send out that are more specific for whatever may be going on, whatever those challenges are. And I'm okay with doing that. We can go to the next slide. So again, types of mental health support, we talked about it already, the counseling and therapy. psychiatry with medication, community resources. So look into your religious leaders for support groups, school counselors, if you have those, any kind of programming that's positive that can connect you to that. But then also too, there are crisis support lines that are global that, let's say you're in the middle of a crisis and it's midnight there, but in the States it might be daytime or whatever. We have 24/7 crisis support lines, and there are global support lines as well. So I'll make sure that's a part of the resources so that anonymously you can say, this is what's going on. Can you help find me support or resources? So we'll make sure that that information is provided as well. There's a question in the chat that says, is it possible to overcome your trauma for lifetime with help? Definitely. Depending on what the trauma is, sometimes we have to do what's called rewiring our brain, because like I said before, trauma lives within the body and it can be passed down through generations. We have to rewire the DNA. So there's a clinical practice called EMDR, and it's where you are able to kind of rewire the brain chemistry and the brain flow. And so with this particular form of therapy, it's light therapy that helps, where the client is going to be looking at these light waves. And what it does is you're processing and going through your trauma experience, but then you also are looking at and thinking about the older memories that are triggering to you. But the light waves, there's like music and things that are in the background that's helping to rewire the physical connection to the trauma. So oftentimes, if you've experienced something in the past and it still shows up as an adult, and you still have the heart palpitations, or you still may have the panic attacks, that's the physical part that your body is still connected to that trauma. And what the EMDR does is it rewires if your body actually has that same physical feeling. So that's a specific type of form of therapy that some people that have experienced severe trauma actually go through in order to rewire the brain so that their body doesn't have the same emotional response to the traumatic event. So then if something were to come up, it's not as triggering, and then they're able to then take the tools that they have and they have learned through therapy to kind of work through, and it does help them to then become the healthier version of themselves and to work through that traumatic experience. Next slide. And so just to kind of recap, one of the things that's important is community when we are thinking about mental health challenges, making sure that we're connected to those that support us, but also too, if you are the person that is the support system, making sure you are listening without judgment. And so we are not using someone else's experience in an argument later or bringing it back up, because that can cause more harm and damage to the person that has just shared. And then definitely, if our values is different than what the person is that just shared something, we're not judging them based on our own personal experiences. So making sure that we are practicing empathy as they are sharing. Also, too, it could be challenging different stigmas that may exist. So if talking about mental health is a stigma that exists, then we're saying, okay, this may be something that is a stigma. However, this person, they felt safe enough with me to kind of share what they're going through. So how can I show up and support them in a way to where they can openly share about their mental health? And then we can look for resources to kind of connect them with what it is that they're looking for. And then just constantly checking in. You may have family members, or you yourself may be the person that's considered the strong person, and people come to you for everything. And sometimes if you are the strong person, you can sometimes be forgot about when people, they may forget that you too may have challenges and struggles as well. And because you are maybe the listening ear or the helper all the time, you often may get left when you're going through some things as well. So just being mindful that if you go to certain people all the time, just checking to see how they're doing as well. And not just because you may need to talk to them in a moment, just a regular wellness check to say, how have you been? Are you okay? And oftentimes when people are struggling, their go-to answer when you ask, are you okay? I'm fine. And when a person says that, that's a red flag too, because if they say they're fine, normally you want to dig a little bit deeper because something else may be going on that's just their immediate response. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm okay. And just realizing that it's okay to not be okay. And when you aren't okay, to make sure that you are seeking support from community, from family, and that if needed, you're seeking support from professional organizations as well. And if you find a resource that has been a good resource, make sure you're sharing that resource as well. Because everyone's mental health affects us in some type of way. So experiences, things that we experience here in the States may affect you. Things that you experience in Pakistan may affect us as well, because we're human. And a lot of times empathy goes a long way. And so when global things are occurring, or just even if it's your neighbor, when they hurt, we hurt, and you may hurt. So just having that sense of empathy and just checking to say, is there anything I can do to support you? It's just a form of basic kindness. And so when our mental health is struggling, it just means that somebody in our community is struggling, and we have to do whatever we can to support those that are struggling as well. And that's a part of just our collective response. And I think that may be our last slide. And so I just wanted to just give you all just a couple of tidbits about mental health, and just kind of looking at a couple of coping strategies, but being able to know what your resources are, and just looking at too, like, what are the things I directly can affect with my personal mental health is important. Oftentimes we worry about things that we don't have control over, but if it's something that you have direct control over, then that's a valid worry. If it's something that you don't have direct control over, that's something that we have to say, okay, well, how can I show up and support in that manner? So just looking at and just understanding that your mental health matters, and being kind to your mind is so important. So if those negative thoughts or things are coming up, making sure we are reframing our thoughts to something that's more palatable and more positive, so that we're not down on ourselves if we're unable to do some things. But then also too, just recognizing when you may need to seek out additional support is going to be key. And again, thank you all for engaging in this conversation. If there are other questions, or if anyone would like to take themselves off mute to ask a question, I'm open to entertaining questions in the chat box or verbally.
Thank you so much, Miss Angela. This was an incredible session. I'm sure everybody had such an amazing time. Guys, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, or this is your time to unmute yourself and connect with Miss Angela.
Thank you. And then also too, if there aren't questions too, I will, if there's one-on-one questions that someone may need to have, what we can do, just so I know what kind of resources, additional resources to provide, I can drop my email address inside of the chat as well.
Sure. And meanwhile, I do have a question. And I think it's pretty basic, because I think a lot of people do sometimes face that. Is it that when you're being bullied by someone in either it's a working space or either it's in education, and you want to like address that issue, but your bully doesn't acknowledge that or makes fun of it, how do you manage such a person? And that might not be a very aggressive bully, but just somebody who's not very respectful towards you. How do you deal with that?
Definitely. Bullying is something that is huge. And oftentimes bullies bully other people. So if you've been bullied before and it has affected you as a child, most likely that person that then becomes the bully becomes an adult bully. And that's where it shows up in the workplace. So it can show up the way that they talk to you, the way that they interact. They can do like little passive aggressive things to kind of sabotage you as well. And so oftentimes, if you feel powerful enough to confront the person and call out the behavior, not the person, so you're not calling the person a bully, but you're calling out the bullying behaviors, then that oftentimes will make that person look at themselves, and it'll look at their actions and behaviors too, because now they recognize that you can see that these are bullying tactics. So calling out the behavior is so important and so key. But then also too, it could be asking other people, have they experienced the same thing with that particular person as well? So collectively, if there's more than one person that this is occurring with, they may just think it's them and they are silent about it. But the more and more people that become aware of the situation, then most likely the behavior then will change and shift, because now it's not just one person saying, hey, this doesn't seem nice, this isn't fair, or this seems like you are doing something to me. When it's called out by multiple people, that's when you'll see a change. But then also too, if it's the bullying behavior in the workplace where it seems as if maybe it's the boss that is the bully, and then now calling it out may jeopardize your place of employment, right? So sometimes that can be the sticky situation if it is the person that is in authority over you. But then you have to say, is this work culture and this environment that I'm in, is it productive, or is it safe for my mental health? Is this going to create and cause more stress? It may be a time then to look for employment somewhere else where that doesn't occur. There's a question that says, does trauma affect memory? Definitely. Some experiences that are so traumatic to you that could have occurred, you may have completely forgot about, because our minds are wired to a place to where if it's too much to handle, it can block certain memories. It can block certain experiences because the event was too traumatic. So depending on the age that the trauma happened, it may depend on how much you remember. So sometimes we experience this as clinicians in mental health, that you may have clients that as they're starting to uncover and talk about childhood experiences, they're starting to say, wow, I forgot that even happened, or I didn't even remember that that happened, when you start to dig deep, because it can affect memory. So there can be blockage, there can be forgetfulness, there can be times where you have what's considered brain fog, where you may have just been talking about something and then you just completely forgot what it is that you're talking about, and you don't have recollection. So it definitely can affect your day-to-day practices. So oftentimes, if that's something that a person is experiencing, we try to tell them to just kind of write down, keep a journal next to you, or if you do voice notes on your phone, you want to definitely keep something next to you to kind of jog your memory. But that's also a reason why I encourage journaling every day, so that you can go back and remember some of those items or some of the things that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So some of my clients, they have journals, they have lots and lots of notebooks, because they're writing down just different things just daily. But definitely trauma can affect the memory. You're welcome. Any other questions?
I guess that is it. But if anybody has like questions for later, you guys can always reach out to Miss Angela or book her. I just want to take another minute to thank you, Miss Angela. This was an incredible session, and I'm sure everybody who was here had an incredible time. Thank you so much. I know you're super busy. You have your clients, and you're always working on like grants and so many other opportunities. So thank you so much. This was so incredible, and we will definitely reach back to you again. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
You too. Thank you.
There's just one last question where Naval is saying that how does she book you for a one-on-one session?
Yes. So let me re-put my information inside of the chat box. Just reach out to me via email. In the email, you want to remind me that you met me on this particular Mind Matters call, and then we will go, or we can go from there. So just reach out to me. I again thank you all for just your patience, for being here to just discuss this important matter with mental health and looking at trauma and just different things that affect us, but then also to just being open to just even discussing mental health is so important. My Instagram is Teen Talk Guru on Instagram. And thank you again. This has been amazing. I've enjoyed the conversation back and forth in the chat, as well as being able to share some experiences and some information.
Thank you so much, Miss Angela. We shared it deeply as well. Have a good day.
Have a good one.